My girlfriend said she wasn't in love with me anymore but wanted to keep living together. So I became the perfect roommate and stopped doing everything for her until she realized what she lost and begged me to take her back. But I had already found someone better. I'm Jake, 28M, and I've been with my girlfriend Belinda, 26F, for 3 years. We moved in together about 18 months ago after she lost her job at a marketing firm. I work as a software engineer at a tech company downtown and I make decent money. Belinda has been doing freelance graphic design work since then, but it's pretty inconsistent income. Let me give you some background about our relationship. When we first started dating, Belinda was this incredibly independent woman. She had her own apartment, paid all her bills, and never asked me for anything. That's actually what attracted me to her initially. She seemed like she had her life together, but things changed gradually after she moved in. At first, she was contributing to rent and utilities from her savings. Then her freelance work started drying up around the time CO hit. I told her not to worry about it and that I could cover everything until she got back on her feet. What I thought would be a temporary arrangement turned into something permanent. I started taking care of everything. I paid the rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance for both our cars, and even her phone bill. I added her to my family plan because it was cheaper than her individual plan. I handled all the household maintenance, fixed things when they broke, did most of the cleaning, and managed our social calendar. When we went out with friends, I picked up the tab. When we went on vacation, I paid for flights, hotels, and meals. Belinda seemed grateful at first. She would thank me and promise things would change once her career picked up. But as months passed, she stopped mentioning it. She started acting like this was just how things worked in our relationship. She would ask me to book dinner reservations for her and her friends. She expected me to drive her places when her car was acting up. She would make plans for us without consulting me, assuming I would handle the logistics and expenses. The physical side of our relationship was good. We were intimate regularly and she seemed happy. She would tell me she loved me. We would cuddle while watching TV and everything appeared normal from the outside. Her friends liked me and my friends liked her. We talked about moving to a bigger place next year and maybe getting a dog. 3 weeks ago, we were sitting on the couch watching some reality show about people renovating houses. I was getting ready for bed because I had an early meeting the next morning. I leaned over to kiss her goodnight like I always do. She pulled back and gave me this strange look. She picked up the remote, muted the TV, and turned to face me directly. She said she needed to tell me something important. She said she liked me as a person and enjoyed living with me, but she wasn't in love with me anymore. She said she hadn't been in love with me for months, maybe longer. She said she wanted to be honest because she respected me too much to keep pretending. I asked her what she wanted to do about our living situation and our relationship. She said she hoped we could continue living together as friends. She said we worked well as roommates and there was no reason to mess up a good thing. She said she valued our friendship and didn't want to lose that by making things complicated. I told her I needed to think about it. I went to the bedroom and lay down. About 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Belinda was in a group chat with her 3 closest friends, and I had access to it because we sometimes used the shared tablet to text when our phones were dead. I could see she was telling them about our conversation. I watched the messages pop up on the screen. Her friends were telling her how brave and mature she was for being honest. They said it showed how much she cared about me, that she didn't want to hurt me by lying. They said lots of people stay in relationships for convenience, but it takes courage to have the hard conversations. I realized something while reading those messages. Belinda wasn't being brave or honest. She was being practical. She had figured out a way to keep all the benefits of our relationship without any of the obligations that come with being in love with someone. She wanted to keep living in the apartment I pay for. She wanted to keep the financial security I provide. She wanted to keep the emotional support and companionship. She just didn't want to feel guilty about not loving me back anymore. The next morning, I told her I was fine with being roommates. She seemed relieved and hugged me. She said she was so glad I understood and that this would be better for both of us in the long run. That's when I decided to become the perfect roommate, not boyfriend, roommate. I stopped making coffee for her in the morning. I had always made a full pot and left her mug on the counter next to it. Now I make exactly 1 cup in my travel mug and take it to work with me. I stopped doing her laundry. I had always thrown her clothes in with mine when I was doing a load. Now I only wash my own stuff. I stopped buying her favorite foods when I went grocery shopping. I had always picked up the specific brand of yogurt she likes and the expensive granola she eats for breakfast. Now I buy exactly what I need for myself and nothing extra. When she asked me to book a dinner reservation for her and her girlfriends last week, I told her I was busy that evening. I suggested she call the restaurant directly since they usually have availability if you call ahead. When her car started making that grinding noise again, she mentioned it to me while I was working on my laptop. I told her that sounded frustrating and suggested she get a few quotes from mechanics in the area. I said Yelp usually has good reviews for local auto shops. She keeps looking at me like she's waiting for me to do something. She leaves dishes in the sink longer than usual, probably expecting me to wash them like I used to. I just wash my own dishes and leave hers where they are. She's been playing sad music in the living room and sighing loudly when I'm nearby. Yesterday, she asked if I wanted to watch a movie with her, and I said I was planning to go to the gym. I can see her getting more frustrated every day, but I don't understand why. I'm giving her exactly what she asked for. We're roommates now. I treat her the same way I would treat any roommate, with basic politeness and respect, but without the extras that come from being in love with someone. Her phone got shut off yesterday because I removed my card from her family plan. She came to me in a panic asking what happened. I explained that since we're not really a family anymore, it made sense for her to have her own phone plan. I offered to help her set up service with Verizon or T-Mobile. I'm not trying to be mean or get revenge. I'm just being logical. She made it clear that our romantic relationship is over, so I'm adjusting my behavior to match that reality. I don't do extra things for roommates that I would only do for someone I'm in love with. The lease on our apartment is up in 2 months, and I'm not planning to renew it. I've been looking at one-bedroom places closer to my office. Belinda doesn't know yet because she hasn't asked, and roommates don't typically discuss their long-term housing plans unless it directly affects the other person. Am I handling this wrong? Should I be doing more to try to work things out? I feel like I'm being reasonable, but maybe I'm missing something. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. A lot of people asked for an update, so here it is. Things have gotten more interesting since I last wrote. Belinda's frustration has turned into something closer to panic, and I think she's starting to understand the full implications of what she asked for. Let me start with what happened on her birthday last week. Belinda turned 27 on Tuesday. In the past, I would plan something special for her birthday. 2 years ago, I surprised her with a weekend trip to Napa Valley. Last year, I organized a dinner party with all her friends at that expensive Italian place she loves. I would typically spend weeks planning, make reservations, coordinate with her friends, and handle all the details. This year, I wished her happy birthday in the morning and asked if she had any fun plans for the day. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. She said she thought we might do something together to celebrate. I told her that sounded nice and asked what she had in mind. She said she hadn't made any specific plans because she assumed I would handle it like I always did. I reminded her that planning birthday celebrations is typically something boyfriends do for their girlfriends or something people do for themselves. Since we're roommates now, I figured she would want to celebrate with her actual friends rather than her roommate. She stared at me for a long moment, then said she would figure something out. She spent most of the day texting people, trying to organize something last minute. Most of her friends were busy because it was a Tuesday night, and she hadn't given them advance notice. She ended up ordering Chinese food and eating it alone while watching Netflix. I was in the office working on a project that was due the next morning. The financial reality has been hitting her harder than I expected. Besides the phone bill situation I mentioned before, there have been several other wake-up calls. Her car registration was due last month. I had always handled that for both of us because I'm organized about paperwork and deadlines. She didn't realize it was her responsibility now until she got pulled over for expired tags. The ticket was $250, plus she had to pay late fees for the registration renewal. Our car insurance was up for renewal, and I removed her from my policy. She had to get her own insurance, which cost significantly more than the family discount rate she was getting on my plan. She called me at work asking why her insurance card wasn't working when she tried to show it to the police officer during the traffic stop. She's been asking me to drive her places because her car is still making noise and she's nervous about driving it. Last Saturday, she asked me to take her to Target because she needed to pick up some things and didn't trust her car for the 20-minute drive. I told her I had plans to go hiking with my friend Mike, but I could drop her off at Target on my way if she wanted. She asked how she was supposed to get home, and I suggested she could call an Uber or take the bus. The bus stop is right outside Target, and our apartment is on the direct route. She ended up taking the bus home, which took over an hour because she had to wait 30 minutes for the next bus and then make 2 transfers. She was carrying heavy bags and looked exhausted when she got back. I think she's starting to realize how much I was handling behind the scenes. I used to take care of all the little things that make life easier. Now she has to figure out everything herself, and she's discovering that being an adult requires a lot more planning and money than she remembered. Her freelance work has picked up a little bit, but not enough to cover all her new expenses. She got a small project designing a logo for a local restaurant which paid $800, but between her new phone bill, car insurance, the traffic ticket, and having to buy her own groceries, that money disappeared quickly. She's been eating a lot of pasta and canned soup lately because those are some of the cheapest things she can find. I continue to buy my normal groceries, including fresh vegetables, good meat, and the organic stuff I like. I keep it all on my designated shelves in the refrigerator and pantry. Last weekend, she asked if she could borrow some of my food because she was running low on groceries and wouldn't get paid for her latest project until the following week. I told her she was welcome to anything in the shared sections like salt, pepper, and basic condiments, but the rest was my personal food. She asked if I could spot her some money for groceries and she would pay me back when her client paid her. I explained that lending money to roommates can make things awkward, especially when there's no clear timeline for repayment. I suggested she could ask her friends or family for help, or maybe pick up some extra freelance work. The social dynamics have been interesting too. Belinda's friends have stopped coming over as much as they used to. I think they feel awkward around me now that they know we're not actually dating anymore. When they do come over, they whisper a lot and keep looking at me like they're trying to figure out what I'm thinking. 2 of her friends, Patty and Amanda, came over last Thursday night. They were clearly there to give Belinda emotional support and probably to talk about me. I said hello when they arrived, then went to my office to work. I could hear them talking quietly in the living room for about 2 hours. When they were leaving, Patty stopped by my office door and asked if she could talk to me for a minute. She said Belinda was going through a hard time and asked if there was any way we could work things out. She said Belinda really cares about me and maybe just got scared about the commitment. I told Patty I appreciated her concern, but Belinda had been very clear about not being in love with me anymore. I said I was respecting Belinda's honesty and trying to be a good friend by not putting pressure on her to change her feelings. Patty looked frustrated and said that wasn't what she meant. She said, "Sometimes people say things they don't really mean when they're stressed or confused." I asked Patty if she thought Belinda was lying when she said she wasn't in love with me. Patty didn't have a good answer for that. The conversation with Patty made me realize that Belinda's friends are trying to fix something that Belinda herself said was broken. They're treating this like a temporary relationship problem instead of the permanent change in status that Belinda requested. I've been going out more in the evenings. I joined a hiking group that meets on weekends, and I've been going to the gym consistently. I signed up for a cooking class on Thursday nights, which is something I always wanted to try, but never had time for when I was busy managing our relationship. Belinda has been home alone most evenings now. She used to have plans with friends several nights a week, but that seems to have dropped off. I'm not sure if it's because she can't afford to go out as much, or if her friends are less available now that she doesn't have a boyfriend to help coordinate group activities. I found an apartment I really like. It's a 1-bedroom place about 15 minutes closer to my office with a great kitchen and a small balcony. The rent is actually less than what I'm paying now because I won't be splitting a 2-bedroom. I haven't signed anything yet because I want to give Belinda enough notice to figure out her own housing situation. She still hasn't asked me about the lease renewal even though it's coming up in 6 weeks. I wonder if she's assuming I'll just handle it like I used to handle everything else. Update 2. The situation has escalated significantly since my last update. Belinda is starting to understand that this isn't a phase I'm going through, and her attempts to fix things have become more desperate. 3 weeks ago, she tried a different approach. She came home from having drinks with her friends and was wearing one of my old college t-shirts that she used to sleep in when we were dating. She sat on the edge of the bed while I was reading and started crying. She said she missed me and missed what we used to have together. She said she made a mistake and wanted to go back to how things were before. I put my book down and asked her what specifically she missed. She said she missed feeling close to someone and having someone who cared about her. I told her it sounded like she was going through a difficult time and suggested she might benefit from talking to a counselor. I said there are sliding scale therapy options if cost was a concern, or she could try some of the mental health apps that offer affordable counseling. She stared at me like I had slapped her. She asked if I was seriously recommending therapy instead of talking about our relationship. I said I wasn't qualified to help her work through her feelings about missing intimacy and emotional connection. A professional would be much better equipped to help her figure out what she really wanted. She got up and left the room without saying anything else. The next morning, she acted like the conversation never happened, but I could tell she was studying my behavior more carefully, like she was trying to find cracks in my roommate approach. The lease situation finally came to a head last week. Our landlord sent the renewal notice, and I left it on the kitchen counter for Belinda to see. She found it when she got home from a freelance meeting. She asked me if we were going to renew the lease. I told her I had decided not to renew and that I had already signed a lease on a different place starting next month. She asked where that left her. I said she would need to decide whether she wanted to take over this lease by herself or find somewhere else to live. I offered to ask our landlord if he would be willing to remove my name from the lease if she wanted to stay. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling that I was abandoning her and leaving her with no way to afford the rent on her own. She said I was being cruel and punishing her for being honest about her feelings. I stayed calm and reminded her that roommates don't typically sign long-term leases together unless they've specifically discussed it and agreed on terms. I said I had assumed she would want the freedom to make her own housing decisions as an independent adult. She said I knew she couldn't afford this place on her own and that I was deliberately putting her in an impossible situation. I pointed out that she had never asked me about my plans for the lease renewal even though she had 6 weeks to bring it up. I said if she had asked, we could have had this conversation much earlier and she would have had more time to explore her options. She demanded to know why I was doing this to her. She said I was being vindictive and trying to hurt her because she didn't love me the way I wanted her to. I told her I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I said she had made it clear that she wanted to be friends instead of romantic partners, and I was trying to respect that by not making assumptions about our future living arrangements. She asked what she was supposed to do now. I suggested she could look for roommates or maybe move back in with her parents temporarily while she figured things out. I said her friend Patty had mentioned that she was looking for someone to split rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. She said moving back in with her parents would be humiliating and that Patty's apartment was in a bad neighborhood she didn't want to live in. I said those were definitely challenging options, but that I was confident she would figure something out. I reminded her that she had been living independently before we moved in together, so she had experience managing her own housing. She said that was different because she had a steady job then, and that I knew her financial situation was more complicated now. I agreed that her financial situation was more challenging, but said that was exactly why it made sense for her to have more control over her living expenses instead of depending on someone else to make those decisions for her. The conversation ended with her storming out of the apartment. She came back several hours later and didn't speak to me for 3 days. During those 3 days, I could hear her on the phone constantly, presumably trying to figure out her living situation. She had several long conversations with her parents, which sounded tense based on the tone of her voice coming from her bedroom. She also had what sounded like a difficult conversation with Patty about the roommate situation. I gathered from the parts I overheard that Patty's timeline didn't match up with Belinda's needs. On Thursday, she asked if we could talk. She had clearly been crying and she looked exhausted. She said she had been thinking about everything and she realized she might have been taking me for granted. She said she wanted to work on rebuilding our relationship and earning back my trust. I asked her what she meant by rebuilding our relationship. She said she wanted us to be a couple again. She said she had been confused before, but now she understood what she really wanted. I asked her what had changed since our conversation 6 weeks ago when she told me she wasn't in love with me. She said she had been scared of commitment and had convinced herself she didn't have strong feelings for me. She said living as friends had made her realize how much she actually cared about me. I said that was interesting and asked when exactly she had realized she was in love with me again. She said it had been building over the past few weeks, but it became clear when she thought about me moving out. I said the timing seemed convenient given that she had just discovered she couldn't afford to live in our current apartment without me. She got defensive and said money had nothing to do with it. She said she genuinely missed being close to me and wanted to give our relationship another try. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but I wasn't interested in dating her again. She asked why not, and I explained that she had already told me she wasn't in love with me. I said I believed her when she said that, and I didn't think people's feelings changed that dramatically in just 6 weeks. She insisted her feelings were real and asked what she could do to prove it to me. I said there was nothing she could do because I was no longer in love with her either. That wasn't entirely true when I said it, but it became true while I was saying it. Something shifted in that moment, and I realized I really was done. She started crying again and said I was giving up on us too easily. She said relationships require work and compromise and that I wasn't even willing to try. I said she was right that relationships require work, but they also require both people to actually want to be in the relationship. I said I no longer wanted to be in a romantic relationship with her. She's been staying at her friend Amanda's place for the past few days, presumably to give me space to change my mind, but I'm not going to change my mind. I move out next Friday. I've already started packing and I hired movers to handle the furniture. Belinda can keep anything she wants that we bought together. I just want to take my personal belongings and start fresh. Update 3. I moved out 2 weeks ago and wanted to give everyone a final update on how things ended. Belinda came back to the apartment the day before I was scheduled to move. She had been staying with Amanda for almost a week, and I think she expected to come home to find me still there, surrounded by unpacked boxes, maybe having second thoughts about leaving. Instead, she found most of my stuff already in boxes and the movers scheduled to arrive the next morning. She asked if I was really going through with it. I said yes. I was moving out as planned. She said she had been talking to Amanda and Patty about everything and they thought we should try couples counseling before making any permanent decisions. I told her I wasn't interested in couples counseling because I didn't consider us a couple anymore. She said she understood I was hurt but that walking away wasn't the solution. She said we had built something good together and it was worth fighting for. I asked her what specifically we had built together that was worth fighting for. She mentioned our shared friend group, our comfortable routine, and how well we worked as a team when we weren't dealing with relationship drama. I pointed out that those things described a good roommate situation, not a romantic relationship. She got frustrated and said I was being deliberately difficult. She said she knew I still had feelings for her and that I was just being stubborn. I asked her what made her think I still had feelings for her. She said she could tell by the way I looked at her sometimes, and that nobody changes their behavior as dramatically as I have, unless they were trying to protect themselves from getting hurt. I said that was an interesting theory, but that she was wrong. I said the reason my behavior had changed was because my feelings had changed. She asked when exactly I had stopped loving her. I thought about it for a moment, then told her it was probably the night I realized she had told her friends about our conversation before she had even finished having it with me. I said that was when I understood she wasn't actually interested in having an honest conversation with me. She was just looking for validation from her friends about a decision she had already made. She said that wasn't fair and that she had just needed support from her friends during a difficult conversation. I said I understood why she needed support, but the timing showed me that she wasn't really considering my perspective or leaving room for us to work through things together. She had already decided how the conversation was going to go. She started crying and said she never meant for things to end this way. I said I believed her, but that intentions didn't really matter as much as actions. The movers arrived the next morning at 8. Belinda stayed in her bedroom while they loaded my furniture and boxes. I had already moved most of my clothes and personal items to the new apartment over the previous few days, so the actual move was pretty quick. Before I left, I knocked on her bedroom door to say goodbye. She didn't answer, but I could hear her crying inside. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a note with my new address in case she needed to forward any mail or had questions about the security deposit. My new apartment is great. It's smaller than the place I shared with Belinda, but everything in it belongs to me and reflects my actual preferences instead of compromises we made as a couple. I have a reading chair by the window where I drink my morning coffee. I bought plants for the balcony. I set up my office exactly how I wanted. I've been dating someone new for about 3 weeks. Her name is Rebecca and she's a nurse at the hospital downtown. We met at the hiking group I joined a few months ago. She has her own apartment, pays her own bills, and has never asked me to fix anything for her or handle her errands. When Rebecca cooks dinner for us, she also cleans up afterward. When we go out, she pays for her own meal unless we specifically agree beforehand that one of us is treating the other. When she says she loves spending time with me, she demonstrates it by planning activities we can do together instead of expecting me to plan everything. It's been a good reminder of what a balanced relationship actually looks like. Belinda texted me last week asking if we could meet for coffee to talk. She said she wanted closure and to apologize for how things ended. I didn't respond to the text. We already had closure the day I moved out. She doesn't need my permission to apologize, and I don't need to hear her apology to move on with my life. From what I understand through mutual friends, she ended up moving back in with her parents. She's still doing freelance graphic design work, but she's also looking for a full-time job with benefits